What have you been watching? What were the 4 movies you saw?
Well, I watched Crash, The Piano, Ghost World, and then The Green Knight.
Ghost World. Isn't The Piano? That's where everyone's like, "Oh, you see Harvey Keitel's dick," which is like not.
Yeah,
it's not too uncommon.
All anyone ever says about that movie. I swear. Like, my parents for years and years and years would be like, "You've got like you got to see The Piano," and I was like, "Is it good?" And they're like, "You see a Harvey Keitel's dick," and I'm like, "Well, that's not a review. Like, you didn't tell me if it's good or not." And then yeah,
no,
like,
that
other
is
people
the
are
review.
just like. Other people are just like, yeah, The Piano. You see Harvey Keitel's dick. It's like, but is it a good movie?
That's the movie that Anna Paquin, she was like either nominated or won an Academy Award for, right?
She won an Oscar for being really fucking annoying.
That's like
she's
Anna Paquin's
good
default
in the movie, but like, you know, she plays like the most annoying child ever. Who, God, if that was my kid, I would go insane.
Isn't she like deaf in the movie or something like that?
In the movie Holly Hunter, weirdly enough, Holly Hunter, it was a big Holly Hunter weekend because she's in both Crash and
She is.
The Piano. But all I could think of was like Mrs. Incredible, or Elastigirl.
You mean you didn't cap off your Holly Hunter weekend with Always, directed by Steven Spielberg?
I know, I capped it off with the first half of BVS.
BVS. Oh no, no, it's lost on me. Hold on. It won't be
Batman
lost.
versus Superman.
Oh my God, that's right. She's. Oh, hey, Cliff Curtis is in The Piano. Anyway, so so Harvey Keitel's dick.
Yeah, you do see it, but it's also a good movie aside from that. But yeah, Holly Hunter's character is mute. She doesn't talk.
Oh, well, that's probably for the best. That's a horrible thing to say. Anyway, so Holly Hunter doesn't say anything throughout the entire movie?
Well, she has voiceover. Like, you get to hear inside of her head.
Okay.
Only at the beginning and the end, fortunately. Because she has a thick Scottish accent, too. Show a typical Holly Hunter, but with a thick Scottish accent laid on top of that.
It's like Billy Boyd mixed with Holly Hunter. I can't imagine. Like,
it's just a high-pitched Sean Connery.
She already eshes her eshes anyway, so it's not that big of a... It probably wasn't
Exactly.
that big of a leap, huh? That's surprising. Did Harvey Keitel also have a Scottish accent through the movie?
No, I think his character's supposed to be Irish or something.
Oh. The thing that always got me was like, I only recently found out that The Piano is the Harvey Keitel dick movie, because
There's more than one.
Yes, and the one I know I haven't seen, and I've always been like, oh yeah, maybe I should see that, is Bad Lieutenant. That's the one that I hear. It's just like, all you see is Harvey Keitel penis and him getting high, and I'm like, this sounds like
I tried to watch Bad Lieutenant, and 5 minutes in, I was like, this is incredibly boring.
That's what I heard. Or I hear it's
all
like really
it is
hard
is
to
like
watch.
Harvey Keitel is like he's a drunk and a drug addict, and that's kind of it. That's like the whole story.
So
like the premise is also the synopsis.
So basically, it's just Harvey Keitel being himself.
Yeah, pretty much.
For like 2 hours. Even recently, like, I feel like there was a recent movie where he was like, yeah, I'm going to show you my dick in this movie. And he's like, I don't want to see your 80-year-old penis.
The Grand Budapest Hotel.
No, he doesn't show it at that. But that would explain why it was just like, it's PG-13. Why? Oh, it looks like he's just wearing a messenger bag. It's fine. No, that's... Or like he wears traditional Scottish, like a traditional a kilt, but instead of like the bag that they have to keep it down, it's just his dick, just hanging low there. It's like the gravity has not been kind to you, Harvey Keitel.
He just uses it as a towel rack wherever he goes.
Oh man. It's like there was a podcast I was listening to, and they're like, pretty sure everyone's first dick was Harvey Keitel's dick, right? Well, it wasn't mine, but for most people, somehow they snuck in and saw the piano, which was good. You said
It is good, yeah.
Nice. I guess the rating is just like Harvey Keitel's dick is good, and therefore the movie is good. And it's like I don't think it works that way for everyone.
I swear to God, if you go to Rotten Tomatoes right now, the tomato meter rating will be like, you see Harvey Keitel's dick, 89%.
Instead of tomatoes, it's just testicles.
And then rotten testicles. And then you get you scroll down and you get the blurbs from, it's like a half a sentence pulled out of every review by Rotten Tomatoes AI that kind of is meant to sum up the critic's opinion of it, so you can get very quick summaries of a bunch of critical opinions all at once.
Right.
So they're all just like, you see Harvey Keitel's dick. Harvey Keitel's dick. You see Harvey Keitel's dick.
The general synopsis of it is just like, you see Harvey Keitel's dick. It's like, okay, well, I guess let's see. And so I'm reading the Wikipedia here, and it's like, in 2019, the BBC polled 368 film experts from 84 countries to name the 100 best film by women directors, and The Piano was named the top film, with nearly 10% of the critics polled giving the first place in their ballots. I want to edit it and say, because you can see Harvey Keitel's dick.
In a poll of all-time greatest movies where you can see Harvey Keitel's dick.
Or just in a poll of the 100 greatest movies of all time, The Piano is the one where you can see Harvey Keitel's dick. Completely tangential to the actual rating.
Tangential to the actual
rating. Oh, man.
The other thing, too, is while The Piano is really good, it does have some very Oscar baity tendencies to it, which I think at the time would have been fine, but now, because we're so cynical about Oscar bait stuff, it kind of rubs me the wrong way.
It was Miramax's dry run because they distributed it.
Yeah.
Why did I say it like they distributed it? I've been
Ken Watanabe distributed.
So I've been on a very weird, ever since that episode, I've been on a very weird kick of sometimes purposefully mispronouncing words, but then randomly unironically doing it. And I'm like, oh no, this isn't good, because
I'm kind of okay with people mispronouncing English words as long as they leave the emphasis intact. But as soon as the emphasis changes, I'm like, go fuck yourself, man. Don't get out of here.
There's a line that's been drawn, and it's not just like a gradient line. It's like a harsh
You're clearly a Russian spy. Get out of here.
A pox upon your sons, sons. May they never see the light of day. One last note about The Piano. Sam Neill is in it.
He is, and he plays, I think, a British guy.
God, Sam Neill is awesome.
He's such a horrible weenie in this movie. It's amazing.
He was one of John Carpenter's favorites too. John Carpenter likes him.
Sam Neill's because I grew up watching Jurassic Park every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I can never get Sam Neill out of my head as Dr. Alan, whatever.
Right.
Dr. Alan last name.
Dr. Alan protagonist.
But yeah, it's crazy all the different things he's been in, and all the different types of characters he's played. And The Piano, he is just so unlikable. Not because he's evil necessarily, but because he's such a he is the biggest beta male in film history in this movie. It's so sad. And he mistreats so many people to overcompensate for that. Meanwhile, he was in fucking Event Horizon, where he's we don't need eyes where we're going.
He was in so I first saw him in a television movie called Merlin. Did you ever see that or hear of it? Okay, so it was like the first like mature-ish show I ever watched, and obviously Sam Neill plays Merlin, and I was like, dude, this Sam Neill guy, he's pretty dang cool. And then I saw Jurassic Park. Like, it took me a while to see Jurassic Park. I don't think I saw it until it was like in the 2000s for me, because like, yeah, well, it came out 93, so I wasn't old enough to watch it in theaters, and then my parents didn't want me to see it because dinosaurs, and I was terrified of the dark, and heck, I was terrified the first time I saw The Matrix. I was like, oh my god, are we all like robots? And oh my god, Keanu Reeves vomited, and vomit scares me because I'm a kid and stupid. And by that time I think I was like 11 or 12, so there really was no excuse for me to be scared. And of course, I end up going back and watching The Matrix like 3 years later, and I'm like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. But so Sam Neill was in Merlin as Merlin, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. And I was a huge King Arthur fan at the time. Okay. And so even though Merlin took a lot of liberties, like everyone was dressed in sort of like Roman inspired attire, I still... Yeah, because they were trying to make it more, quote, historically accurate.
By making it less historically accurate?
Well, by being like, oh, well, you know, the Romans conquered the lands of England and then it fell into disrepair, but like they weren't in like the like if you saw Excalibur, where everyone's in like heavy plate mail and they're like pretending to swing swords at each other. They're like, we wanted to be historically accurate compared to that. It's like, okay. Well, I guess.
Well, I mean, yeah, they didn't have plate mail back then, because I think, isn't like Uther Pendragon and William the Conqueror kind of supposed to be the same person?
So that I don't know, because I'm a big fan of Arthurian mythology, but as far as like the historical context of it, that's where I start that's where I'm like, I haven't looked into it in like years.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just remember reading that like a lot of the King Arthur shit is supposed to take place around like 400 or 500 AD.
Yeah.
So this is way before like plate mail or anything like that, and Rome still existed.
Mm-hmm. That's like as it's gone, or at least as sort of like was King Arthur real? You know, the History Channel original miniseries. Did King Arthur actually exist? And it's like, okay, but like as they're trying to pinpoint roughly when King Arthur would be, it seems like it is like they've gone to say like, okay, it's like Roman inspired, and then they have that King Arthur movie with Clive Owen, everyone's favorite line reader.
They want to take your baby. That's anytime someone says Clive Owen, that it's like a Pavlovian response. And someone's like Clive Owen, all I can think is they want to take your baby.
Oh my god, Children of Men is great, but like him and King Arthur, it's like Clive Owen is such a big dude, and then they kind of put him in armor that's like kind of ill-fitting, in that it's like he still looks kind of imposing, but only because Clive Owen in general looks imposing. And then like they give him Excalibur, but it's like a Roman-inspired sword, so it looks really tiny in his hands, and it's just like, this won't work. Did you ever see that one, the Clive Owen King Arthur movie?
No, I haven't watched much King Arthur shit.
He like goes over to Morgan Le Fay and he's like, I'm going to take your baby. No.
Look at what they make you give.
It's like my kind of trash. But that leads us into the episode proper. So I guess I'll just start the clean slate right here.
All right.
She went under the wheels.
How affected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, if you haven't guessed, we're talking about Arthurian mythology, but specifically David Lowery's new movie, The Green Knight. Did I say that right? Is it Lowery or is it Lowery?
Same thing.
And like, it probably sounded exactly the same when I said it that way.
David Seasoning Salt's movie.
So, yeah, the only thing that would have made the thing that could have improved the Green Knight, regardless of what you think, is if they had Sam Neill in there in some capacity. Is all I'm saying. So let's get into it. Do you want to start with ratings?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want me to go first or you?
Yeah, you can go first.
All right. So I am giving it a high witness, low shiny, and chrome. I keep going back and forth.
Yeah, I'd probably give it's a low shiny and chrome for me.
Yeah. I had a feeling it might be. I was like, all right, because it has that A24 style with like the very slow, deliberate camera work that you and Austin really like, and like the production design is very interesting while being very haunting. And so yeah, I was wondering where it was on the scale. And I have an interesting history in my screening of the movie, which I'll get into. But before we start that, Gabe, why don't you give us a plot synopsis of the movie since you've seen it more recently?
Okay, so
Where to begin?
Dev Patel plays. They call him Garwin in the movie.
Yeah, they call him Gawain, but it sounds like everyone is saying Garwin. Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, it's like yeah. I think that the way it's actually said is more like Gawain or Gawain if you really want to be phonetic. But yeah, so he plays Gawain like
like Rose McGowan.
Rose McGowan, yeah, exactly. Who's like a young kind of ne'er-do-well in King Arthur's court. He's also King Arthur's nephew. So he goes to a Christmas feast at the Round Table, and then just in the middle of the feast, the Green Knight, who's this giant knight made out of like trees and plants and shit, shows up and challenges everyone to a game where, if they can hit him with any sort of weapon, he will give them his axe, and then they have to visit him in a year, and whatever blow is delivered upon him, he will deliver upon them. So, Gawain takes up the challenge and thinks it's going to be like a fight, but the knight just kneels down and exposes his neck.
Nice.
And then Gawain is like, well, I guess I can get out of this by killing him. So he chops his head off. And then the knight's like, okay, cool. He picks up his head and he's like, I'll see you in a year, and rides away. And everyone's like, what the fuck? So over the course of the year, like, Gawain kind of becomes this, semi-noteworthy celebrity because he slew the Green Knight. And then the next year, before Christmas, he goes on this like epic, dreamlike odyssey across England to visit the Green Knight and fulfill his end of the challenge. And he just kind of like does various tasks and meets various characters along the way.
Yeah.
And learns a little something.
And there's cum.
What if the real cum was the friends we made along the way?
Oh man. What was I'm like, there's so many places to go from here. So I'll start with, what would you like to talk about on the movie? Because there's a lot I want to talk about.
I don't know. You're the host. You say things, and then I'll give my opinion on them.
All right. So I'll talk about my experience watching the movie as just kind of a starting point. Austin already knows this. Because like my experience was so strange, I had to contact Austin because I was like, I don't think we're seeing eye to eye on this, and he's he gave me some advice that helped me to process the movie. So I went in and I was like, okay, it's A24. It's gonna be weird. Like, all right, I know it's gonna be strange, but I'm expecting like, you know, swords or like, you know, Arthurian mythology. Like, I know this. I roughly know what happens in the story, so I should be okay. So the movie starts, and it starts with like Dev Patel's head getting lit on fire, and I was like, "What am I in for?" But the people I saw it with, like about halfway through, they decided that the way that the movie was done was definitely not for them. I think it was the part after he had gone into the like after he had left the castle, and the little kid comes and talks to him. And then he finds himself in the middle of the forest, and the camera pans around really in like a really long panning shot. And then like you see something there, and it was just like, what the fuck just happened? And I think that was the point where at least half of the people I was with were just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch this. So they proceeded to talk through the rest of the movie.
Oh, no.
And as they were talking, they were like, this is the dumbest thing ever, or like, this should, you know, like, well, that's a stupid thing here, or, oh, this thing is here. And they got progressively louder and louder. And the end, which is, if you don't know what's happening at the end, it's very off-putting. But after, it's one of those things where, like, if you sit through and wait till you see the end of the movie, it's incredibly satisfying. But about halfway through the ending section, they were just like, I just want to leave. I want to get out. They wouldn't stop talking, and I could not enjoy or process what was going on. I was nervous about the end of the movie. And then it's like, it was like Promising Young Woman, where it's like, this is going in a weird direction, but I hope it makes sense if I just stick it out. And it kind of stuck the landing initially. But I just came out of that movie, and like the first words out of everyone's mouth was just like, that was horrible. That was that was weird. I didn't like that. This was awful. What a joke. This is probably the worst movie I've ever seen. And I was just like silent the whole time. And they're like, well, what did you think? And I just unloaded. I was just like, I couldn't enjoy the movie at all. Like, I wanted to sit back and like process this thing. It's not like a standard movie. It's not a popcorn movie. It's going to engage your mind on different levels. You're going to have to think about it. And so I just texted Austin. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to think of this. I don't know what happened. And Austin was like, honestly, after I saw it, I wasn't sure how I felt either. But it's a movie that kind of gets into your brain and sits there and expands. And the more you think about it, the more it works. And he also said, like, if you go to the A24 site and watch the recap of this story, then a lot of the events will make sense. And so the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. There's a couple of events in the movie where, like, the story of the Green Knight itself it has some episodic elements where it's like, oh, this knight errant is going out and doing good deeds and doing, you know, lordly deeds and things like that. And they have a version of that in the movie, but it's all integrated into the narrative in a very streamlined way. So it's like, so I started appreciating those moments, and I appreciated how they made allusions to other things while still being critical of like the basis of the Arthurian mythology and like the romantic notion of knights. And so the more I thought about that stuff, the more it worked for me. There's still some stuff in the movie that I don't love, but the things that I don't love are very subjective. And it's things like there are certain shots that like me personally, I think they last too long, or camera movements that I'm not sure why they would do that, or scenes that play out like this. But it's such a coin flip that it's better that it's the way it is than it's better that the way it is, but you can tell it was the director's call, and some people will really like it and other people will not like it as much. And that's fine. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
No, it's interesting because, I mean, for starters, the ending, I think was probably the weakest section of the movie. Not necessarily because of how the story ends, but the ending sequence I thought was handled pretty poorly.
Okay.
We can get into that later.
Yeah, I want to get into the ending because we'll put a spoiler on it when we start heading into more spoiler territory.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because in my theatrical experience, you know, it was a pretty empty theater, but there were a few people who just walked out, I think, around the same time that you were saying that your comrades started being really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
They got up like they were going to get snacks and just never came back.
They snuck into Shang Chi. Anyway.
And then, like towards the end, but not quite, there's a guy who's maybe 2 seats down from me and my girlfriend who was getting like really drunk, and he just like started laughing, and he just turned to us and was like, "This movie's weird, man."
I was laughing during the movie.
I could smell the beer on his breath.
Oh God.
I mean, I was laughing too, but there was just like little things that I thought were funny, not so much that like, oh, this movie is weird, so I'm gonna laugh now. But yeah, so it's like I get that it's not for narrow-minded people because I've witnessed firsthand them having a hard time with it. Yeah, I really like it. It's like basically everything but the ending is great, and it's because it's like it looks fantastic. I get that it's like very episodic in nature, but like every story older than like the Victorian era is going to be episodic. There was no such thing as like a 3-act structure until 150 years ago. The Odyssey is episodic. All King Arthur shit is episodic. All old myths and legends are episodic. It's just like, and even if there is like a central quest, you know, a Joseph Campbell-ish quest that the hero is going on, there's like a billion distractions on their way. Like, you know, it's like Percival has to find the Holy Grail, but like he's really just kind of dicking around, like doing random shit in the various towns he comes across. And then at the very end, he finds the Holy Grail. It's like, oh yeah, that was the whole point of this story. Or like Journey to the West, you know, it's like we have to get these scrolls to India. It's like, okay. Most of it is just them like, we visit this town. There's something going on, like a demon's attacking it. We have to save the town. Oh, here's another town with another problem. Let's fight another monster or whatever. And it's just like that forever and ever. And then they're like, oh, hey, we're in India. Our quest is fulfilled. And the Monkey King is now a good guy. All old stories are like that. So it's like, I'm not going to blame it for being episodic when... First of all, I don't think saying something is episodic is a criticism.
I don't
either.
Know.
That's not like qualitative in any way. It's just a statement of fact. I know some people don't like that, but I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, that's fine. And
although I would say that this kind of feels episodic, but everything connects in a way that a lot of like...
Well, but who cares if it's episodic or not? It's like, it's not a judgment. It's just a statement of like the type of story that it is.
Right. I'm just saying I think the original story is episodic. I think this does a good job of connecting, of like having every element or everything that happens in it all connects back to the whole. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't
mean, this
feel
is
like
going to be
episodic.
Definitely more focused than the source material because
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing, it's like a lot of the source material, a lot of old stories were like told verbally,
right,
a long time before they were written down. So they tend to be kind of these like long, winding campfire stories that just go off in a million directions. It's like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, you know? But yeah, this obviously does a good job of taking those like little vignettes and tying them together into a coherent picture where you know, you have Gawain who wants to be a big deal and continually tries to sort of shortcut his way to that, and then sort of realizes that, like, oh, you know, I actually have to like work for this and help people and not be like a selfish prick all the time.
That's why I think it's an interesting, like, I don't want to say subversion, but I mean, it kind of is an interesting sort of criticism or deconstruction of like the romantic notion of knights going out and being valiant. Is like, there's nothing that valiant about Garwin. And like that's also kind of a sticking point of like, it could make, if you don't know that the movie is sort of about Garwin not being a courageous knight. Like, if you think going in that he's going to be this valiant hero, it can it might like be like a cold splash of water for the first half of the movie when you find out that in fact he is just, you know, not that great actually. And that was kind of my initial experience of it, was like, oh, this is a movie about how he's not valiant, but how he.
Well, I figured like any modern fairy tale is going to be cynical in that sense, so it's like I was not surprised at all.
Yeah.
It would be more surprising if they just played it completely straight.
Yeah. Although I'll say, like, I kind of feel sad because I would have liked the baseline of them playing it straight and then being able to watch this, which I guess it doesn't really matter because there's other versions of the Arthurian mythology and you can watch like Garwin be awesome in those. But like for me, I wanted the baseline of like this awesome visual style mixed with sort of like the you know, completely sincere, we are awesome knights that cannot be defeated by anything, and like the iconic knight version. But that's just a personal preference of mine. It's not fair to hold it against the movie, but yeah.
It's interesting, the whole Garwin thing. Apparently, they were gonna go with like Gawain or something, and then on the first day of shooting was the banquet at the beginning. And Sean Harris just he immediately comes out calling Dev Patel Garwin. And the director was I did not expect that. But I figured he did his homework, so he just rolled with it. Like he wouldn't just do that without like putting a lot of thought into it.
So I don't know if this is controversial, but like
he just took it on faith that like Sean had the right idea.
I want to see the Sean Harris King Arthur movie. Like I loved him as King Arthur in this. I don't know why, and it shouldn't work, but for me,
it really shouldn't. But it does work.
It worked like he was so awesome. I was like, this is the movie I want to see. I want to see this guy.
Well, it's like Sean Harris is weird because he always comes across as like Solomon Lane from Mission Impossible, and not like Solomon Lane with the beard. I mean, it's like clean-shaven rat-looking Solomon Lane from Mission Impossible 5: Rogue Nation,
killing people in boxes and shit.
Yeah.
Like look at me with like big open eyes while I kill.
And he's like,
friend.
It's weird how they completely change him, because in number 5 he's like very sharply dressed, clean cut, weird looking with like glasses and stuff, and then in the 6th one he's like this raggedy homeless man, which is kind of the look he goes for generally, I think, in most movies.
It's his comfortable look, like in The King.
Yeah, but it's weird to see him go from like Mission Impossible 5 to he plays Macduff in Justin Kurzel's Macbeth, where he's like just a total badass. And it's like, this is weird. It's weird that Sean Harris is the badass of this movie.
It just shows this flexibility as an actor.
I guess. It's like one of those things where you don't believe it, but then you kind of do. Like there's a strange uncanniness to him being the the Mad Max of the Macbeth verse, you know.
Is Sean Harris gonna enter our pantheon of like semi-favorite to favorite actors?
I don't know, because he's too funny.
It's like I both cannot take him seriously and yet I could completely take him seriously.
That's the thing. I thoroughly enjoy all his performances, even though I can't take him seriously in any of them.
Although, like I said, I really liked him as King Arthur. Like, I totally bought into it. I didn't buy into, like, his wife as Guinevere. I was just like...
No.
I was like, no. But I bought into Sean Harris, like, Garwin, if you do this act, you are going to be committing yourself to... And I was like, oh, yeah. I will follow this guy into war. Sure, yeah.
Your mission... should you choose to accept it.
Have you ever
But I
not
wonder,
accepted?
Ethan, did you ever really choose?
I wonder, Garwin, could you have ever really chosen?
Like, oh, yeah. That was one of the points I wanted to make was Sean Harris as King Arthur was like such a lot of the casting in this was like really inspired and good. Like Ralph Ineson as Innocent as the Green Knight, which was practical.
The thing is like I think all of the casting choices were like these really ballsy hipster choices where it's like you would not think of this person as this character, except Ralph Ineson, who it's like, well, obviously he's gonna be the Green Knight.
I mean, I guess he's like the budget pick Green Knight. It's like, but like the budget, it's like the Buffalo Trace of Green Knight, where it's like, oh, actually, it's really good. It's just also really cheap. Like, because I mean, what else is Ralph Ineson doing? Although I know I've seen him in something other than The Witch.
I mean, he just plays scary voiced villains and stuff. He's one of the bad guys, or the bad guy in Gunpowder Milkshake, which is not a very good movie.
That's right, he is, isn't he? Yeah, that. Yeah, Gunpowder Milkshake. I'm trying to think of. I saw Edge of the World, but I don't remember him in it. He's also like, I think unless I really recognize him, or unless I really get to start recognizing him like right off the bat, I'm not gonna know who he is because he looks completely different in the Vitch than he does in like Ready Player One. He was in.
I mean, that's kind of his thing. He plays like big, scary voiced villains. He's got a perfect voice for a CGI bad guy.
Yeah.
Because I feel like for most CGI villains, they just take the actor who's playing them and like put a shit ton of reverb on their voice so it sounds deeper than it is. Like Thanos.
Yeah,
Josh Brolin doesn't actually talk like that, but Thanos has like this booming thunder voice whenever he speaks. It's like, okay, that was a lot of like audio processing. Or anytime Benedict Cumberbatch is a bad guy and something like a CGI bad guy.
Yeah, and you're thinking of in The Hobbit where they're just like, all right, the audio mixer. It's like, of course I'm going to get an Academy Award for this. I got to get. Although Benedict Cumberbatch's voice was all weird because he was like crawling on his stomach, and then they're just like, and we're going to add a lot of bass and make it nice and deep.
Crank the bass.
Do you now?
Yeah, it's like cartoonish. Honestly, anytime Benedict Cumberbatch plays a bad guy, they put his voice through a cartoonish amount of processing. Anytime he plays a good guy, he just sounds normal. But with Ralph Ineson, you don't even need that. He just talks like that.
Yeah.
So that's why he's a good fit for that. But yeah, everything else, it's like Sean Harris is creepy King Arthur. That's weird. And then you see the movie, it's like, oh wow, he was terrific.
Yeah.
Or like just this like randomly just casting a bunch of Indian people.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, I don't get why, but it works.
It's like I guess Dev Patel works as Garwin. It's like, yeah, actually he does. I was actually wondering if the mother was the same person from Tenet. I had to look it up. I don't think she is, but I was wondering if
she's not, fortunately.
I was like, even more reasons to hate Morgan Le Fay. But yeah, although I will say that like I think Joel Edgerton as the Lord, that's also kind of like
that was a fun like cameo.
Yeah. But I thought that was like pretty like, yeah, okay, that's pretty standard. It also drove home the relationship to the movie The King,
Oh
with
my
me,
god.
where I was
Please don't ever bring up that movie again. It's so bad.
I actually wanted to rewatch it after watching this because I was like, all right, it's got that sort of like visually the Green Knight is miles better because they're like
Yep.
everything works in a very cohesive way, and there's something about the style that reminds me of old German expressionistic movies, specifically if you've ever seen the Siegfried movie that that Metropolis dude Fritz Lang did. The Green Knight feels very similar to that, except with
Wait, is
like,
that
a
the
better color
Ring movie
palette.
that he made?
The Ring movie that he made.
Because Fritz Lang did make a movie out of the Ring opera.
Is that the one with Siegfried and the dragon and going up and all that stuff and like the
Yes, I think so. I think Siegfried is in the Ring as well.
It's called like Der Nibelheim or something like that.
Yeah, that's the Ring.
that's the one. That's the movie. Yeah, I only watched the first half of it, but like the way that the sets and everything were, like the use of negative space, and then like also just the costume design where it's kind of like an elegant but slightly stripped down look. Because I'm staring at the
Yeah.
poster with like Dev Patel wearing his like yellow trousers and yellow cape, carrying the giant axe, and it's just like it's just so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
No,
But
yeah, it
it's-
has a really interesting production design to it. And it does
Yeah.
have that kind of German expressionist look where it's like, it is very sparse. Like, it's not, the production design isn't done in like this really gilded or gaudy way. It's just like very basic, but effective. Where it's like everyone's clothes are just kind of like rags, but they're really cool looking rags, you know?
deceptively simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of like a lot of scenes have a general color theme to them,
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
which also is very German expressionist-y, where they would just like dye the film a certain color to represent a certain mood.
Yeah.
The only issue I have with the look of the film is that the first section of it is really dark. Like, it's hard to see in a lot of cases, especially because the camera is moving around very, very poorly lit castles, which I guess is realistic because, you know, if you ever visit one of these old castles, the windows aren't very big.
Right.
But it was kind of annoying. But I mean, as it like you're kind of outdoors and later on, it looks incredible. And I also really like the tone of it. That, you know, it is very dreamlike. There is just this undercurrent of tension throughout the whole thing because it's interesting because like all the characters sort of accept that like magic and witchcraft and the supernatural are real, but there's still like this anxiety towards all of it where like, you know, like they're aware that like magic and other supernatural shit exists, but anytime it actually happens to them, it, you know, it is scary. And that kind of creates this, that I think mixed with the very dreamlike tone of it kind of makes everything unsettling in a certain way, which I thought was really interesting. And I like that aspect of the movie a lot, where it's, you know, the hero's going around and meeting all these characters and doing various tasks and stuff, but there is always this undercurrent of danger to it.
Yeah.
And like at any moment, you know, some unexpected magical horror could befall our protagonist.
Yeah, our valiant protagonist. Yeah, no, that's very true, and like I definitely felt that, and it kind of comes true when like he runs into the scavengers, and then it's like that's the part that I was like, oh no, this is going to be one of those things where he doesn't have anything, and he still has to like trudge on, and this is going to be a nightmare to watch. But you're right, like just thinking back to it, like also they leave a lot for you to sort of like piece together as it goes, because I like they have that scene at the castle, and it's intercut with like Garwin's mom like doing like creepy Zack Snyder cutty chanting with all of the other people in Norway as Aquaman goes into the water, but instead it's just like a sash, and they're like, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I don't remember this happening. Like, is she summoning the Green Knight to the table, or like what's, what is going on? Is she like a good guy? Is she a bad guy? It's like I had forgotten about that until I read a synopsis of it again, because there's moments that stick out visually in my mind, and then there's elements that I've just completely forgot happened in it, which I guess adds to the dreamlike feel.
Well, yeah, because it's very obvious that she summons the Green Knight in the movie. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they leave off. That's kind of it. They don't go any further in terms of explaining anything, which is fine. I know in the old like King Arthur stories, Morgan Le Fay is like more of a force of chaos than anything. Like she's not good or bad. She's just like is always shaking things up.
She's the Jar Jar Binks of the Knights of the Round Table.
Yeah, because I also read a synopsis of the original story after watching this, and it's kind of in line with that portrayal of her, where she creates the Green Knight as a test of King Arthur's knights' courage, because she's kind of cynical about them, mm-hmm. and how sort of perfect they're, viewed to be by a lot of people. So it's almost like a petty, like, oh, well, you think your knights are so great, I'll show you, they're a bunch of bitches. But obviously that makes it becomes a lot more complicated in this, because she's also Gawain's mother, mm-hmm. in the movie, which is, I don't totally get why she would put her son through all this.
I think it was she didn't think that he would be the one to take up the mantle.
Maybe
that's my only guess, but like it's still, especially if you don't have that background information, or you're not able to make that leap, it's still weird to see like, oh, go, or no, wait, or does she talk to him about like you need to be valiant and your time will come, or something like that?
Well, she does tell him at the beginning, like, you need to get your shit together,
mm-hmm. just like a good mother.
Well, it's interesting because I was reading a short interview with David Lowery, mm-hmm. and someone asked him, it's like, why did you make, why is Morgan Gawain's mother in this? And why does she do all these things being his mom, when it makes more sense to throw like a random knight in danger? And he was saying that when he was in his like late 20s and possibly early 30s, he kind of had that like failure to launch sort of thing, where he was just like living in his mom's basement or whatever. And she was always like telling him, like, you need to get your shit together and leave. So I guess like he was saying he kind of wrote their dynamic thinking of that. Like Gawain is sort of this fuck up who, just spends his time like drinking and whoring when he should be making something of himself. So his mom is really trying to just get him out of the house. Mm-hmm. Which is like, that's interesting. I don't know if I like how much I buy that in terms of how the movie is executed. Because, my view on authorial intent. I don't think it matters. It provides context, but it's mm-hmm. It's not definitive in any way.
I agree with you. I think it is interesting, but it also makes me think of all of those like movies in the, like, it's like a Seth Rogen movie just set in medieval ages. Like, why don't you just get your shit together, man? It's like, I don't want to because I'm living a good life. Oh yeah, well now you're not. And it's like the push forward. That's when you were telling me about it, I was like, oh my God. But that's the thing about the movie, is like it draws influences from so many different things to me. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of ways to read the movie, which I really like, mm-hmm. which isn't necessarily common in a lot of sort of like popcorn movies. Like, you're not going to get a lot of reads, you're not going to get a lot of interesting interpretations of it. And I think the fact that there is so much to interpret in the movie isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all. I mean, it's because there's nothing to a lot of popcorn movies.
Right.
I mean, what I think is really interesting about how this is done, and to kind of your point, is that a lot of these old tales have like a very clear moral, which, like, the whole tale is very symbolic. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, usually the narrator or author explains what all the symbolism is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, well, it's just not even that. It's like, and then Lancelot did this, which is why we do this, and blah blah blah, and why you should always blah blah blah, and then like continue, and like there's like they keep a lot of the time. Like I was reading like these old Welsh folk tales, a lot of which were the basis for some of this King Arthur stuff.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of that in there where it's like, and then after this great battle, there were only 5 families left, which is why today this region is divided into 5 segments, and and then the hero did this, which is why we do this, to show thanks or something. Like, there's a lot of that stuff just interjected into the middle of these stories. But what I like about The Green Knight is that it strips all of that away. So you're just left with this symbolic narrative, and it's on you to make your own reading of it, generally.
Yeah, I agree. Oh no, I was gonna go in another direction, and I forgot what that direction was.
You were gonna go in another.
I was. I'm still thinking about the. Can we get into spoilers? Because I want to kind of be able to talk about a lot of other things in the movie. The one image I have whenever I think of this movie, oddly enough, is Dev Patel riding on a horse going forward as the castle grows smaller in the distance, and that shot just like holding for so long. And that's when the scavenger comes in and all that stuff happens.
Well, a little while later, but yeah.
Yeah, a little while. Yeah, like 10 minutes later. It's like, this is the movie of Dev Patel riding on a horse. I was surprised because I'm looking at the credits list. I'm kind of surprised that David Lowery is credited as the editor. It makes a lot of sense because it does feel like a movie that he had a lot of control on how it's cut to. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of an interesting notice because the pace of it is very deliberate, for lack of a better word. I will say that, like, we were talking about the sort of like the filters that they had to color code each segment of the movie, and the ending of the movie is the only sort of color overlay that I felt both went too far and I just didn't like. Like, I for some reason,
because it's yellow, and yellow, it looks really unnatural.
Somehow someone went in and like his cat peed on the film stock, and like it's like,
well, you know what's weird is like yellow and green are kind of the two color washes you're generally told never to use unless it's really deliberate, because they look really unnatural. And earlier on Gowan goes on this crazy long journey, and eventually, he kind of like passes out and wakes up in this castle, which is owned by Joel Edgerton and his wife, Alicia Vikander. And Alicia Vikander keeps trying to sleep with Dev Patel. And there's also a blind woman who's like a witch.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the blind woman. Sorry. It was really uncomfortable. The three of them together present Dev Patel with kind of another test of his valor. But there's a scene where they're all kind of like chilling in the dining room, I guess. They're talking about green, and they're like, why is the night green? And Dev Patel says, because he's not of this earth. And then Alicia Vikander gives this whole speech about like environmentalism or whatever. But
Which I that was the other part of the movie I found really annoying because it seemed like a total non sequitur. But at first I thought they were just talking about like film technique and color washes. They're like he's not of this earth. Like, you know, green looks unnatural. Don't put it in your movie. And then when he goes to the Green Chapel where the night is, everything's yellow, which is also unnatural. So I thought that sort of duality was interesting, where it's like you have a knight made out of plants, but because he's otherworldly and therefore unnatural, even though when we think of nature, we think of plants and shit.
Right.
Everything's colored yellow to make it seem like extra wrong.
I thought I honestly, you're probably right. I thought that it was tinted yellow because they wanted it to be like a really warm, earthy scene. So like that's how I always think of it though. Like even on those Soderbergh color washes where he has like the super heavy tint, like it always feels like when it's yellow, it's like supposed to be warmer. But I just thought that they pushed it too far, and it was like, okay, well, we pushed it too far, but we wanted sort of like a hazy look, maybe to add to the dreamlike feel of it.
I think for Soderbergh, yellow is his orange in some senses, even though he does use orange as well. I always think of yellow and like David Fincher uses a lot of yellow, and his movies always have this cold, like creepy feeling to them. And the yellow colors are typically stronger in moments where things are off. But I just figured it was kind of meant to make that region feel extra otherworldly, because like also that, you know, Dev Patel is tailed by this CGI fox for most of the movie, who's not named Tails. He's tailed by not Tails.
He's tailed by the fox who we will now always call Tails.
And the fox starts talking to him once he's in kind of the yellow world, which again, I think is... It's part of that subconscious effect that yellow's going to have, where it's like we're in kind of this other world now. So now the fox is going to start talking.
Yeah.
Which I was talking to my girlfriend about it because she, you know... She has more patience for these kind of movies than the average Joe, but not as much patience as maybe you or I. So she was saying, it's like as soon as I was like, so where did the movie lose you? And she's like, as soon as the fox started talking, it lost me. And I said, well, you got further than most people, so that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah. For the record, my wife was like, I don't think I get all of it. I think I can appreciate it. So she's much more in the sort of like, it was not absolute trash than some of the other people I've talked to. I don't even remember the fox talking to him. Like,
yeah, it's his mom talks to him through the fox and says like, turn back.
That's right. He's
like,
like,
don't do this.
He's like, no, fuck you, mom. That's right. I forgot about that. I even forgot about... God, Mom, stop. I had to do this myself, all right? I don't need your invincibility cloak, okay? Okay, so the question I've been meaning to ask you, aside from like the ending, which I want to get to, the thing I really want to ask you is when the camera pans over and it goes from Garwin alive to Garwin's skeleton, because that's the moment I think everyone, like 50% of the crowd was just like, I'm done. Was they just see like the skeleton sitting there and it's like, really? He just died? Which I thought was kind of funny. Why do you think they had that? I have my own thoughts on it, but why do you think they set that up or put that in the movie?
I don't know. I think it's maybe to establish stakes. Like,
if
he may not get out of this.
Okay.
Because I think anyone who's familiar with the source material knows that he lives and everything is fine and everyone lives happily ever after until, you know, King Arthur's kingdom goes to shit. But
until more dread comes in the form of Mordred. Anyway.
Oh God. I mean, you're not wrong. So I think it's like to establish stakes in that sense, but also I think it ties in with this weird like environmentalism tangent that just bugs me because it feels so out of place. Because like if you notice in that shot, the forest he's in is more overgrown as well.
I figured that was just like to show the passage of time. So I didn't get the environmental angle to the movie. It makes sense given he's a Green Knight made of all plants.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think there's an environmental angle to the movie. I think just Alicia Vikander gives this speech about environmentalism that just is completely unprovoked, unwarranted. It doesn't add anything.
We need to protect nature and the animals. Joel Edgerton, I'm going to go hunt.
Yeah, and there's like little other elements of the movie that kind of like wink at, or nod at that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just like this weird out of place thing that's in a couple scenes. It's like Tenet, the environmentalist angle of Tenet that is so stupid. Same idea, at least to me.
Alicia Vikander must protect Garwin against the algorithm.
Oh my God.
Kenneth
He gets
Branagh
a phone call from the future from fucking
from the protagonist.
What's his name? No, not the protagonist from
Robert Pattinson?
No. Who's the over the top British guy? Who's in all
Kenneth
Shakespeare
Branagh.
movies? Kenneth Branagh. He gets a phone call from the future, or I guess from the past or something, from Kenneth Branagh, who's like we have to reverse time so that our ancestors can hold us accountable for how we've treated the world or something.
And then Kenneth Branagh shows up as Mordred. Oh man. Oh, Kenneth Branagh. Who that dude cannot stop making movies. He was supposed to have the next movie in his Poirot series come out this year, and instead he has a different movie coming out that's shot in black and white. Yeah. He won't stop making movies. Can't stop, won't stop. He's like, nah, I gotta erase Artemis Fowl from everyone's mind. Gotta remind them that I didn't actually direct that. See, my thing with the skeleton was I thought that was indicating to the audience that, well, one, to turn half the audience off. Like, if you can't deal with this, you're not going to be able to deal with the underage girl who got her head cut off that Garwin has to like bring the head back to. But I also thought it was to foreshadow that specifically in the ending, the movie does not necessarily, it can show you the future, but it's like the mirror from Lord of the Rings, the future that has not yet come to pass. So like this could be the future if he does, the wrong thing, but the right action would be to like cut himself loose, I guess. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But like we will show you the future, but that is not necessarily set in stone. It can change. And that comes into play in the ending, which we can talk about now if you want to, or if you want to.
Sure.
All right. So you didn't like, you thought the ending was the weakest part.
Yes.
Did you like the ending, or was it just like, did you like what they were attempting with the ending, or would you rather them just scrap it and go with the original ending?
I would rather, so here's my problem with the ending. It's not what the way it ends, but the way the ending is constructed, if that makes sense. Basically, so, Gowan finds the Green Knight. He kneels to have Dev Patel kneels to have his head chopped off. He flinches, and then flinches again, and the Green Knight kind of admonishes him for being afraid, and then he bails on the deal, runs away, and then we have this extended musical montage of him living out the rest of his life as everything slowly goes to hell. And it goes on for like 10 minutes. And then he wakes up and he's back with the Green Knight. And he's like, wait a minute, I haven't been honest with you. And he takes off the green sash that's supposed to protect him. And he's like, there, now I'm ready. And the Green Knight says, good job. I'm proud of you. And then the movie ends.
Well, no. He says, "Good job. I'm proud of you. Now off with your head."
And then the movie ends.
And
But
then the movie
it doesn't
ends.
matter. None of that matters. Giant fucking dream sequence has no business being in this movie. Like, it stops the momentum of everything completely cold. It's way too long. It's boring. And the thing that really is bad about it is that a movie like The Green Knight in general demands a lot from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're making a movie like that, you kind of you're asking the audience to give you their trust, and you have to respect that. So if you take them to the end and they're with you the whole way, and then you throw their trust out the window for this bizarre, like, non sequitur dream sequence that, again, is really long, really boring, doesn't add much of anything to the movie, other than, like, you know, Garwin changes his mind afterwards. It kills all the momentum you've built up to that point. Because I checked out during that dream sequence. I was like, Jesus Christ, when is this going to end? Like, it just goes on, and none of it adds anything. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
like at a certain point, you get what the theme of the dream sequence is, so you know what's going to happen. It's not a surprise that things just keep getting worse, and Garwin continues to be a dick, and then everything, like, his kingdom falls apart, and blah, blah, blah. So it's just like, kill me. And then it comes back, and I'm like, oh, thank God, that wasn't actually the end of the movie.
Oh, trust me, that's how I felt too.
Yeah, so it's like the ending is the weakest
Well, not
part of the
all of that,
movie,
but
not
when it
because
came
of
back.
what happens, but because they just have this random fucking dream sequence that goes on forever and doesn't contribute anything.
So that's kind of where I was at when I started talking with Austin about it. And I actually think the Green Knight saying, "Now off with your head" at the end of the movie is significant, especially for audience, like, acceptance of the movie. Because, like, I was like, Austin, I don't know what to make of that ending. And like you said, it's like, you could take the route of it doesn't matter. Either the Green Knight knocks his head off, or, you know, he's saying now off with your head, as in now leave, be off with you and your head. But I think that's significant. And I don't always love, because I felt like that was an open ending to the movie.
Yeah, I didn't.
No, did you think he was just going to kill him? Or did you think he's just like, all right, Garwin, get out of here?
So what's weird is David Lowery says he kills him.
Does he?
Yeah, he's like, they shot an ending where he kills him, but they decided to not use it because it would be too, like, on the nose.
Yeah.
I disagree. In my head, he lives.
In my head, he lives. I think if they had him killed, it would turn it from people praising it to people thinking he was a piece of shit.
Like, in my mind, he lives. He says off with your head because he has to, you know, he still has to, the test isn't over. He still has to, like, sell that, like, I'm going to chop your head off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in my head, it ends like the original story. You know, he says, all right, I am actually going to kill you now. Good job. And then, you know, just kind of, like, gives him a thwack on the neck, and it's like, okay, you passed. Like, you shouldn't have lied to me, but you're good.
That's the conclusion Austin made as well. And he was like, I mean, I choose to look at it as a positive thing. And it was actually my wife who was like, off with your head, as in, like, leave. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I think that if he had gone with the sort of, like, killing Garwin, I would have gone out of that movie being like everyone else and like, this is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen.
Well, it's also,
in my
like,
life.
thematically incoherent, if that's what happens.
Right. It's too, like, it's like, I like, the easiest is like with Suicide Squad. If they had killed Ratcatcher, it's just like, it's too far. It's one move too far.
Well, I would say it's almost more like, I don't know, like you have a movie where you're trying to, like, build this idea, and then your ending is just like, actually, no. You know, it's like you're trying to make a point, and then your ending, like, undercuts all the work you've done.
Promising young woman. That's what I was
Yes,
thinking of.
it's like promising. It would be
young
like
woman.
promising young woman
Yeah.
if he died.
Yeah, exactly. So that's but that's also how I felt when I was watching. So the sequence showing like the potential future if he ran away from the night. At what point?
Let's call it the dream sequence.
The dream sequence. At what point? The daydream sequence. What point did you realize it was probably a daydream and not reality?
The moment everyone stopped talking.
Same here. Same here. I was like, no one said anything for a while. I think this is a dream sequence. I don't think it's insignificant. I do agree that it's too long, but I think it's probably the length it is because he really wants to push forward this idea of like this is the future. Let it sink in. Let it feel.
I don't know. It's too long, but I also think it's not additive.
I think it's significant for like because I actually like looking back on it. I like it. Is it extremely excessive? Yes, but all of the war stuff and everything, I was like, all right, I'm down for. But it also showed like they compress into time, like showing how Garwin goes from like a coward to a dick to then losing everything, even though he thought he was like he got everything he wanted, but by being a dick about it, he lost everything in the most brutal way possible. And like turning his back to everything. So I like how they did all of that and compressed it into, even though it was a long time, that amount of time. Also, watching like the line be drawn across his neck and then his head falling down is an image that will probably always stay with me. So there's a lot of stuff in there that I really liked. And I'm guessing it was like, well, it's going to err on the side of feeling too long. But if it weren't that long, it wouldn't be as impactful. Now, for you, it wasn't impactful. For you, it was just like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah,
this is a shitty future. Let's go. Let's go.
It doesn't. It's not impactful because I mentally left the theater.
Yeah, that's also a moment that was a moment where the people I was watching with, they would not stop talking over her, which like I partially get, but also I was like, I was trying to just appreciate the filming technique, and that's another time where like the technique is overriding really anything else that's going on. But I mean, I think it's significant, but I think what you're saying is you understood the significance of it, but it was just too long. Like if he cut down some of the moments, made them more flashes than just like full sequences of things like that, you would have appreciated it more.
Honestly, all of the work done by that sequence could have been done by like one really good extreme close-up.
You think so? Of just like
of Dev Patel acting instead of all this shit.
I like the sequence, so I'm gonna disagree with you on that because I don't think you would be able to show the whole arc of like him basically crawling over everyone else to become king. Because I always think of like Alicia Vikander as the prostitute and how she like had the kid and then the kid was taken from her and she was cast aside. And I'm like, oh my God. That's all you really need to show how much of a dick he is. But like, I don't know, that's a lot of the things that stuck with me in the movie came from that sequence, maybe because it was too long, but also because like those moments were impactful. I didn't like it.
Again, I was not there. So.
I didn't like it when I came out of the theater. I didn't like that sequence because, like you said, it was too long or it's weird. But as I've thought about it, the more I've thought about it, the more I like it. So, I mean, it was a risk to do, but I'm glad he took the risk, even if it ended up like plugging a lot of people out of it.
I'm not. I'm a big believer that sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And in that case, less is definitely more. Because, like I said, it's the other part of it is you're asking a lot of your audience already, and you have to respect the people who've come with you this far. Mm-hmm. You have to respect the effort they've put in.
Yeah.
That you don't want to betray the trust that you've built up.
That's a good point. Now, I think because they have that ending where it cuts back, like I think that kind of, like you said, that shows like, oh, if, you keep keep faith, audience. If the first red herring didn't get you, this red herring won't get you. But I can appreciate that it's like it's one moment too far. Although it also might just be like David Lowery's like, I'm never going to be able to direct another movie like this. I want to have my war sequence in here, and I'm going to put it in because it's just it's just at that budget range where I can get away with it. So I don't know if that played into it either. But
I don't know. I mean, if he really wanted a war sequence, he could have had a bigger fight with Gowan or something in it.
That's true. But see, that's like your feelings towards that scene are kind of like my feelings towards a lot of the pace of the movie. like you said.
I mean, I liked everything else about the movie. It's just that dream sequence and Alicia Vikander's speech. Basically, anytime the movie stops completely dead to elucidate on something that I don't care about, that's when that's the shit I don't like. I love everything else.
Yeah.
What was interesting is, the original story is kind of about, it's just kind of another story about like honor and chivalry and that in a vague sense. Because Gowan's character in the old stories is he is, there's all these stories are, a lot of them are about chivalry and like manners and proper behavior and things like that. And there's all these like rules that knights are supposed to abide by. And the whole thing with Gowan versus like, some of the other knights is that Gowan is considered one of the most morally good knights, but not the most morally good, because he follows the rules to the letter instead of to the spirit of why they were written. And the whole thing with his tests involving the Green Knight is that he gets himself into trouble by following the rules to the letter. But because he's well-intentioned, he kind of gets through it.
Obey the law and you will be rewarded.
Yeah. But what's weird is that, or I guess what I like about this is that it's not about that at all. The movie's not about that at all. But it is I think in a lot of senses it is about that in a more general sense, about honesty, honor, things like that. But I was talking with my girlfriend about this a few days after we saw it, and she had a really interesting view of it that I hadn't thought of. Because she was basically saying the movie is a metaphor for life. Like, life is a journey towards death. And you know that at the end of all this, that's what's going to meet you. And so, Gowan is literally running towards they keep saying towards his destiny, which the destiny for everyone is to die. Believing that that in doing so, he will achieve something. And it's interesting that it calls into question, I think, a lot of how we think about our purpose in life and like what we're on this earth to do and why we do the things we do, because he's running towards death. And, Joel Edgerton asks him, why are you doing this? Why are you so set on this? And he's like, well, if I do this one thing, I will have everything I want. I'll be an honorable knight. Or no, he says, if I do this, I'll be an honorable knight. And he's like, well, is that what you want? And he's like, yes, that is what I want. And he's like, so if you just do this one thing, you'll have everything you want and everything will be fine. And he's like, yeah, I think so. And I don't know, I just thought that was a really interesting take on the movie. And I think that's become my view of it as well. Where it is really ultimately a story about, like, what are we doing here? And why are we doing what we do? And why do we think the things that we think are important, why do we think they're important? Well, and why do we set out to do them? Because you see that a lot with people. It's almost like Soul. Like, he's like, if I play this jazz show my life will be complete. That's it. That's all I need is just this one thing. Mm-hmm. And then when he gets it, he's like, "Well, what? I don't know. I kind of feel
do it again
whatever
tomorrow."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I mean, I guess obviously, the Green Knight is a lot more symbolic and more. It acts in a more subconscious way, but I think it really is also about kind of that same thing. It's like I am going to do this one thing, and then my life will be complete, and everything along the way is basically saying like, is asking like, are you sure about that?
Right. Well, you can extrapolate that to the dream sequence too, though, right? It's like all Garwin wants to do is like have sex with the prostitute and do nothing. And then his mom's like, well, no, you need to be a knight. And then he's like, okay, I got to be valiant and honorable for Arthur. And then he goes out to be like, okay, well, I made a promise, so I need to keep the promise, and that's going to make me the knight. And Arthur's like, ah, yes, and one day you will be king. So then he's like, okay, well, then that's clearly what I like. Adding to what you're saying about like what he wants and what he needs versus what he wants versus what everyone is expecting for him. And then in order to get that, what does he have to sacrifice? And we get to see all of that. And it's like, well, if he wants to be king, he has to sacrifice, his prostitute. And then if he wants to remain king, well, his son will die and this will happen. And like to achieve this thing that everyone wants for him brings him nothing but ruin and a decapitated head. So if that's the end point anyway, why don't we save all of the pain and trouble and just do it now? Which you were like saying that while you were watching the dream sequence, of course, but like that's an interesting take on it. Like I'm obviously going more with the sort of like his wants versus what everyone telling him he wants. And so finally, like he actually makes, and I guess that's the other thing is like with the head that was taken off, he makes the choice to get the head. When it comes to the fox and saving the fox, he makes the choice to save the fox. When it comes to the knight, the Green Knight, it's his choice to stay there and not run.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of the thing. It's not what defines him isn't the end, but everything else along the way. It's right. Him helping the spirit of the well. It's him saving the fox. It's all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And it proves his character. And that's the other thing that I came around to the movie for liking. Like I like that he has all of those little side quests, which end up compounding and like like what does it mean to be a valiant knight? Well, sometimes it just means making the right choice and being doing this. So that's what ended up really working for me. So. But yeah, at the end of the day, though, and I like that the movie itself is so symbolic, and that it's basically like a very simple plot structure filled with imagery. And that's one of the things, like, it's hard for people to watch movies like that. But in a vacuum, I do really appreciate watching movies like that, because that's what makes me think more about the craft of movie making. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of gets me excited. Especially like I've been watching a lot more short films, and a lot of short films operate on almost pure symbolism. Yeah. And to watch a big art house movie that is operating mainly on symbolism is it engages the part of my brain that doesn't get to be engaged as often as I would like it to be with a lot of modern blockbusters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you tell a story that way, I think it gives it allows it to be bigger and to work more effectively, because it is something that you think about, but it's also like operating on a subconscious level. Whereas like a lot of movies that will just explain to you in words what they're about, you tend to forget what they're about because words are forgettable.
If they're about anything at all.
If they're about anything at all. Like... Yeah. Like frickin' Ray Winstone's speech about women in Black Widow. It's like, I'm sure this is what the movie's about, but I really don't care.
Yeah.
Because it's a guy telling me what the movie's about.
I mean, sometimes it's appreciated. Especially if it's like with cliches, if it's executed well, I appreciate it. If it's executed sort of tongue in cheek, depending on the movie, I will also appreciate that. But when the movie sort of gives you enough visual indicators that you can see, like, you can draw your own, and I guess people hate, like, oh, I hate it when I have to draw my own interpretation, or a movie, makes me draw my own thing. It's like, I hate it until I find a movie that does it pretty well. And then, because, like, the movie, like, to me, The Green Knight is all about themes. And so I appreciate it, even if I don't love every single choice made in it. I still really appreciate it, which is why it's hard. Like, I want to give this a flat out, just like a high, shiny, and chrome, but there is something about it, kind of like how you had an issue with the ending. I had issues with it. Maybe it's like that pan to the skeleton just laying there. It's like watching a Looney Tunes cartoon. I was like, what am I doing in here? Like, it was so goofy with the skeleton just there. So I don't know, or like the cum on the freaking green belt. I was just like, what is, moments like that I was just like, I really want to love it. Like, that's I guess the quote mature way to sell the idea of, like, oh, I'm going to give you a kiss, Garwin. But instead it's like, I'm going to get you off, Garwin. And it's like, I just imagine, like, the Green Knight is like, or the Lord is like, did you give me everything? And he's like, no, let me undo your pants. And,
trust me, bro, you wouldn't want it.
I remember one of the things that they sold this movie on is like, this is a sexy retelling of the Arthurian myth. And I was like,
what?
Yeah, like, they're like, oh, it's like, the A24 was using that. It was like,
A24 has some interesting marketing tactics, I'll say that.
They do, but also, so actually, I do want to talk about A24. So one thing I talked to Austin about was, like, because, in his review, he's like, everyone should see this movie. I don't understand why A24 movies aren't making, like, a shit ton of money at the box office. And, like, I appreciate A24. I appreciate their stuff because they're putting movies that are much more like art house and much more interesting on levels that aren't necessarily that normal studios, and even a lot of the quote independent unquote branch of the studios are doing. But, like, I feel like this is a good example of a movie that people who love this kind of movie love, but a lot of people won't like. And so I feel like every time the whole argument of, like, man, A24 is the only studio doing good stuff with movies, I'm like, yeah, but, like, I can pull regular people who these movies rely on, not these specific movies, but, like, movie studios in general rely on, and movie theaters to make their money and pay their rent. Like, if we loaded theaters with movies like The Green Knight and Midsummer and You Were Never Really Here, like, the theater would close down. Like, these megaplex theaters would close down because
I disagree.
Okay. Why do you disagree?
People will eat the food that they're served.
That's right. This argument. Okay, go ahead.
If all movies are like this, then these are the movies that people will watch. It is how it is.
I think if all movies were like this, then no one would go to the theater.
I could not disagree more. I think because what you consume trains you in terms of what you consume in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're brought up on kind of vacuous blockbusters or whatever, that's going to be what you seek out. People ultimately want A, what's there, and B, what's familiar. So if this is A, there, and B, familiar, like it's ubiquitous in that sense, then it's going to be the type of movie that people watch. You know, I think the only reason people don't watch it is because they're taught to like, you know, Shang Chi or whatever. It's like you know, if you never eat vegetables, you're never gonna like vegetables. But if all of a sudden vegetables were the only thing you had to eat them, you'd develop a taste for them. You wouldn't just starve.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and obviously, you know, you can live without movies.
Right. I just like
But
I mean, I think that in today, because specifically, we can't do the whole thing of like, if these were the only movies for the past 50 years or the past 100 years. We have to do it like in today's style. Like if they just completely eliminate all big blockbuster movies the way that we see them now, with the really fast editing and the, you know, the over reliance on like really like beautiful CG shots, which by the way, after watching some older movies, I'm like, man, it was much better when like we used CG judiciously and weren't just obsessed with like over the top CG moments. I was watching Spider-Man 2.
yeah.
Well, because Spider-Man 2, like they were like, okay, well, we have to hide how bad the CG is, but we're still gonna have a lot of shots. But like if we just stayed at that level, we'd be fine. But anyway, I digress. Like if you eliminate all of the movies of that style and just put in the movies with like the slower pace that operate more off of metaphor and movies like this, I think that it would, like, the people who are already sort of like ho-hum on theaters would just be like, you know what, I don't need this, because it's too much of a system shock. I think it would take too long for people to really be able to start appreciating and understanding this. Can it happen? Yeah, but like if we pull this off, people will just stick with TV. And TV has that same editing rate that movies have. It's got like, you know, the budgets for CG are going up, and people also just don't really care that much about how good visual effects look.
My point is more like, what if it would have to be like everything is like this?
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, but like even if that happened I think if that happened on TV, people would just start watching reruns. Like
of what? Fucking Cheers?
They just go back and like all of a sudden everyone's like homophobic, like in the Friends days. I don't know. I just like, I don't
Friends
see.
Is so painfully unfunny.
It's very hard for me to watch. I used to love that show, but like I think that the system shock, if we just like, these movies aren't for everyone, and I don't think they should be for everyone.
I think they should be.
I don't, because I don't like Midsummer. So like for example, like I don't like Midsummer, but I like The Green Knight. Like I don't have to like everything they do, and I'm happy with people who don't like.
You don't have to like everything they do, but these types of movies should be for everyone. It's just it grosses me out that there's like a specific subset of filmmaking that is divergent in quality, like all subsets of filmmaking, that people just won't watch because it's not, because asking anything of them is asking too much of them, you know?
Yeah. But I mean,
it's like they would, it's like, you know, a lot of blockbusters these days are like, they're like Coors Light.
Right.
Like, if you drink enough of it, you can get a buzz going, but it's just like, tastes like soda water. Like, there's nothing to it. Versus, I don't know, literally anything else. Anything but Coors Light. But people are just addicted to Coors Light.
Versus a good brewery's porter, or yeah.
I mean, like I said, literally anything else. Even a fucking, like, not Bud Light, but like a Budweiser would be better. Well,
I think that like there should be a gradient.
I guess so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the bigger point I'm trying to make, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, obviously these artsy movies, no one is going to like every single one. They're not all going to be good, but they're all going to be interesting, or at least not even all of them are going to be interesting, but like there's going to be more diversity. There's going to be more going on in there. And I think having that be the norm is also going to create a template for people to do more exciting things with movies. So then the really weird shit is possible. Then, once you start having more of these unusual movies, these art films, that it creates a standard where the artists have more control, and then that will eventually produce new types of movies, new types of blockbusters, where that control and that creativity and ambition and risk-taking is taken even further. You know what I mean? So it's like if these movies are the norm, there will be a whole new standard of excellence that emerges from that. You know what I mean? Go ahead. Also,
go ahead.
The big issue with the blockbusters, one being the fact they're made more by executives and financiers than by artists, is that they're all the same. Right? I can't differentiate between them anymore. Like I watched all the Marvel movies I watch, all these superhero movies, big action movies. For so many of them, they all occupy the same slot of like, it's all right.
Do you think
it's just like it's an entire universe of filmmaking that is ruled by like averageness, and the only
by least
response,
common denominator.
It's ruled by averageness, and the only response it produces, at least in me, is one of apathy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I would rather have the universe of popular filmmaking be these kind of more intentional artistic statements that, good or bad, are not so apathetic, Like I want it to be full of, I want the world of filmmaking and the world of discussion around filmmaking and film watching to at the very least be passionate and full of, people who really love these movies, who really hate these movies, who like movies that say something, that provoke something in people, whether good or bad, and movies where the people who make them are given the ability to put their creative powers to their fullest use and given the ability to say something. Because right now, the world of popular movies, it's a whole lot of emptiness. It's just empty. And that's more what I'm against, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, so I just always come back to like you were saying about the audience. The audience will go and see whatever they want to, and like, yeah, that's true. But we've seen that like this cycle always happens, where we have the big blockbustery movies that come out and people really like them, but they're all very empty, and eventually they collapse, and then it's replaced by something else, like the Warner Brothers movies of like the gritty Warner Brothers cheap movies of the 40s, or the independent film scene of the 70s, or the independent film scene of the 90s. And like, those kind of take over, and then the studios get their hands on it, and the studios fuck everything up. But at the same time, like during those times, the artists are making okay money. I guess I was gonna say they make okay money, and then like the movie like Star Wars comes and just like everyone does the same, or a movie like The Avengers comes and everyone's just like, oh, we got to make everything like The Avengers.
Well, but again, that's what happens when you inject business people into the conversation, right?
Right. Well, they'll always be there. But
they will. But I think there needs to be a redistribution of power in that sense, because it's like to an extent, like you're right. You're right about some of the stuff about like people will go to the thing because that's all that's offered. Like movies like Clerks and Pulp Fiction completely reinvented how we handle dialogue in movies. Where it's like, and even Scorsese stuff, it's like, oh, fuck is not off limits.
we can say it as many times as we want to in these movies and people will still come. We can talk about coming in movies and people will come. But it's, but it's like, it's not, and it kind of hits a mainstream portion. So like you are right about that. The whole over obsession with like really bad one take action scenes in movies now has kind of come from the independent market. But I still,
but like this is bigger, I think, than all of that. I mean, it's people go and see these blockbusters because that's what is advertised to them constantly, right? There's no, like, you're not going to watch the Super Bowl and see a trailer for The Green Knight, but you will see a trailer for whatever the new Star Wars is or whatever, right? Or for Disney Plus. Like, there's a million colas out there in the world.
Yeah.
People buy Coke because it's advertised to them constantly and because it's what's served in most places.
Yeah.
People will buy what is there and what they know, like what's shown to them. So if you and that's kind of all there is to it. It's like, I think a lot of people seem to think there's a lot of market psychology out there that I think a lot of it is bullshit for the most part. Like, at the end of the day, if it exists, if this is what you can get, people will take it. People take what they can get. If Coca-Cola dropped off the face of the earth, and all of a sudden RC Cola was served at McDonald's and it was being advertised on TV, no one would buy Coke anymore. Everyone would buy RC Cola. It's that easy.
Yeah, I guess like the whole idea of like A24 should be running, A24, like, why isn't it doing better? It should be in every theater. Everyone should be watching these movies. Like, I was literally in a theater with a bunch of people who do not like this type of movie. And would they eventually? Well, maybe. But
again,
like, the
not
idea
every
of
A24 movie is going to be like The Green Knight, though.
No, but like, if you look at all of the other offering, like they all advertise the movies similarly. And you were saying that A24 has weird advertising, and I would agree with it.
Yeah.
Like,
but their advertising is really good because it doesn't tell you anything about the movie.
It doesn't. But
like here's a counterexample.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I keep interrupting, but
no, you know what? No apologies. No, go ahead.
Good Time.
Yeah.
All right. Good Time was not advertised very heavily. It did okay at the box office. It's a fantastic movie. It's an A24 movie. Mm-hmm. But A24's business model is not to make blockbusters. It's to make enough. They're not trying to compete with Disney or Warner Brothers or Paramount. They're just trying to make their share of what they think is their share of the pie.
Right.
That said, once Good Time showed up on Netflix, all of a sudden everyone knew what it was. It was widely acknowledged by people who I wouldn't expect to know about it or care about it as a very good movie. Everyone's like, it's like, wow, Robert Pattinson's a fantastic actor. I had him all wrong from the Twilight stuff. And it's like, yeah, like, you put good movies like that out there, people will watch them. That's the thing. It's like they're not being put out. They're not made as easily accessible as they should be. Like, right now, The Green Knight is only playing at one movie theater 2 times per day. Anywhere near where I live. But every theater has 300 showings of Shang Chi and, the dude from In the Mood for Love. Like, so it's just
Shang Chi and the dude from Andy Lau. I had to I was like, wait, who is it? You mean the other guy?
Tony Leung?
I was gonna say, I know it's the guy from he's the guy from the Grandmaster and from Hard Boiled, which, by the way,
Tony Leung was in. He's from In the Mood for Love. That's Tony Leung.
Go watch Hard Boiled. Like, if for the people out there who are wondering what our review of Shang-Chi is, go watch Police Story In the Mood for Love, and Hard Boiled, and then you don't have to see Shang-Chi.
Actually, if you want to know what my review for Shang-Chi is, listen to our podcast on Black Widow and extrapolate that to every Marvel movie.
Yeah, like, I feel bad because the guy, like, Simu Liu, who plays as the main character in it, does a really good job. There are a lot of issues with the movie that are outside of his control, but it's gonna make a shit ton of money anyway. So no one really needs to know our review. I'm just gonna recommend other Hong Kong action movies that have like similar.
That's the
or
weird
better
flip
action
side
scenes.
of this is like you can make a really good movie and not sell it enough, and no one will see it. You can if you build a brand, which is a marketing concept, like if you sell really, really hard until you get this brand, like this a name that conjures all these associations in people's minds, you can slap that on anything and it will sell out in a heartbeat.
Yeah, although sometimes you become like a slave to it, because the majority of the issues I have, just like with Black Widow, the majority of the issues I have with Shang Chi are all related to the studio behind it.
Well, yeah, I mean that's how it is. It's
But
like the Supreme clothing. All it is just it's like a shirt, a plain shirt with the fucking Colgate logo on it. Instead of saying Colgate, it says Supreme, and people spend shitloads of money on it. It's all just branding. Like if you brand well, if you sell, if you get in people's faces and like convince them that like, look, this is good, this is big, you're gonna want this. People will get it. People will want it. And I think a lot of independent studios don't want to compete with Disney and other really big studios because they have so much money. And they're taking such a huge risk. The risk is not in the movies themselves. The risk is in how hard you're trying to sell them and who you're trying to sell them to. Right?
I guess
because I think the other thing I think is like it's easy to shit on audiences who just love garbage and will only consume garbage, but like like everyone is capable of watching, understanding, and maybe even enjoying The Green Knight. I think people are just trained not to. You know, I think even the people that you went with who walked out. I think if that's
true, but that's like saying everyone like to me, specifically with A24, to me it's like asking people to read Ulysses and be able to like extrapolate that. Like that's what it feels like with some of the that's why I guess I have the unpopular under the wheels opinion of like I would rather have those big studio movies as long as every now and then they produce something like Lawrence of Arabia. Or, Kingdom of Heaven director's cut.
But which we would never get now.
Well, we're about to find out if The Last Duel is any good. But we do sometimes like hit upon something that's like for me, I'm happy that a movie like The Suicide Squad is here because it kind of like funnels in a bunch of stuff that I love. Including for some reason Peacemaker having like this like broadsword. It's like it hits all the sword and sandals stuff that I like. I don't, because I'm looking at a list of like A24 movies and I'm like, some of this is just way too intense. I think for like, I wouldn't want this intensity level for every single movie that's out. Like The Lobster or Climax, like I actually really enjoyed Under the Silver Lake. I think you were the one who really enjoyed it and Austin didn't enjoy it as much, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Or like even Good Time. Like Good Time is a very intense movie experience. And sometimes you just need something that is frivolous. And I don't fault frivolity. The problem is like audiences have come to see frivolity as the status quo. And by taking all of that away and saying that these are the best things, it's like, well, no, sometimes you need the radish to cleanse the palate is all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be places for other movies. I think it's more like, I don't know, compare like, what's a good kids movie?
It depends, because I actually really liked Luca. I thought it had a good message for kids.
Yeah, okay. Compare Luca, which was just kind of crapped out on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
To like the Angry Birds movie. It's like that again, the
it's emoji
like
movie.
There's or like the emoji movie. Like even within the universe of like kids cartoons, there's there's stuff that's good that should be promoted and encouraged, and then there's truly awful garbage out there that we need to dispense with. Because it's like, for every Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, there's like 10 of these fucking Emoji Movie, Romeo and Juliet, Angry Birds, Secret Life of Pets type of things that just look horrendous. Also, I rewatched Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs recently, and that movie's amazing.
Lord and Miller.
I know. Like, it's weird. I think...
So I guess
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's their best movie. I like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs the best.
I mean, I guess something like Into the Spider-Verse would be like my argument for like why I don't want everything to be like A24. Like, I think Into the Spider-Verse or like a lot of the Pixar movies hit that sweet spot.
Well, isn't Into the Spider-Verse, I don't love that movie by any means, but isn't that like the A24 kids movie?
It probably is the closest, but it's still a Sony movie, and
but
it's not nearly as esoteric as like a lot of A24 things feel.
Well, no,
like
but it tries. Like it tries to do something more than just make money.
Right.
And that's ultimately what's important. When I say I think when Austin and I say every movie should be like an A24 movie, like what we really mean is, or at least what I really mean is, every movie should have some sort of creative or artistic intent or merit.
Mm-hmm.
The Marvel movies have no artistic merit. It's all business.
Yeah. Someone like that, and that's what I like about like
where it's
the Henry Fords, the John Fords and the Howard Hawks and
they're making these big budget movies, but there is artistic value to what they're doing. There's artistic value to the Lord of the Rings. There's artistic value to some of the early Star Wars stuff. There's artistic value to Into the Spider-Verse. Again, even though everyone seems to be madly in love with that movie, and I think it's decent.
I think it's fine. It's just fine.
There's more going on than we need to make a Spider-Man movie to cash in on Spider-Man fans.
Yeah. Although, that's Sony's... But see, and that I'm fine with. I don't get the feeling
that's Sony's rationale for funding it, but that's not the team who made the movie, that's not their rationale for making it.
Right. I just, I guess that's where I come off of as, I would rather have more movies, not necessarily like that, but apparently like that, than movies where it's just, the only thing that mattered was artistic intent. I think there's a place for them, but I don't think we'll ever get to the point in the world where that will be the main driving factor. Because a lot of the time, it feels like A24 has to be very creative in their marketing in order to sell it. And even then, it mainly sells to the crowd that loves pretentious movies, which I'm definitely part of. And we'll go see them all the time because of that.
I don't know, man. I saw The Lighthouse with a sold-out crowd in an AMC, of all places, so... You can, and most of them were like, what the fuck is this? But you can do it. You can do it. And the thing is, it's like watching The Lighthouse once and then only watching Disney stuff before and after is not going to change anyone's mind about anything.
Yeah.
But, if you watch all these things in equal measure, that will start to kind of change the way people
audience.
think. And the other thing too, it's like when it comes to weird movies, a lot of people will be turned off by weird movies, but I think a lot of them just haven't found the right weird movie.
I agree with that.
Turn the key in their mind. That's like, oh, you know what? This is actually pretty cool. I wonder what other stuff is out there that is different, that is new, that is,
Yeah, we actually
has got something extra going on for it.
We talk about that in education, about how it's important to find the key that unlocks what they're interested in, because it's easier to unlock the gateway, or it's harder to find the gateway to unlocking them to appreciate something than it is after they've already got that key unlocked. It's just
well, it's because I'd seen a good example for me would be I had seen a few David Lynch movies in my teens, like Blue Velvet. I saw most of Mulholland Drive, and I didn't really care for them. I thought they were just kind of a mess. And then I watched Twin Peaks, and I absolutely love that show. And that was the key that opened the door to being able to rewatch, Blue Velvet and be like, wow, this is actually really genuinely amazing. And appreciate all this other stuff. Because it's like I had to have something that was familiar enough, but that forced me to think in a different way. To where I could continue to think in that different way.
I will also say this, maybe another kind of reason I have blowback to it is because like if every single movie were like an A24 movie, then A24 would lose some of what makes it special. But that's
again,
a very minor thing.
Yeah, but like it's not every movie would be like that. It's like it would create a new paradigm that would then create other new movies.
Paradigms, yeah. But I'm also like just not as much as I appreciate the long, drawn out, beautifully staged, slow moving shots. Like sometimes I need a bit of like fluff in my life. I need a bit of reminiscence fluff in my life just to be okay. So
Reminiscence fluff? Oh,
the
the
movie
movie
Reminiscence.
Reminiscence.
Yep.
Yes, I forgot that was a movie.
Yeah. And it
keeps being advertised as like someone from Westworld is involved in this, because Westworld is like one of those like quote unquote mind blowing shows,
right?
So who is it? Is Jonathan Nolan involved, or is it someone else?
I think Jonathan Nolan is one of the producers, but it's his wife who is the writer-director of it.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, so you're saying that it could supplant The Piano as the number one female-made movie of all time?
No. I think it made maybe like 100th of its budget back. No one saw it.
It looks like crap. I mean, it looks like Jonathan Nolan trying to out Jonathan Nolan himself.
Yeah, that's one of the things is like if it had the budget of The Green Knight, it would be fine because it's basically a movie that uses the sci-fi genre to tell a very cliched detective story. It's very much like an homage to the old Warner Brother detective stories. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you want to do it, do it decently because truth be told, I enjoy those kinds of movies. So I don't mind going to the theater. And I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed it. And there's not much more to the movie than that. And if it were 20 years ago, that would be fine. But audiences, studios and audiences expect every movie to make $100 million and end with a world ending. Spoiler, I'm going to spoilers for Shang-Chi here. But like they always expect everything to end with this sort of like galactic scale event happening where the main characters have to get out of it. And it's just like you said, like I do agree that not all movies should be like that. And I'm getting sick of it. And like Reminiscence is so small in comparison, but the budget for it is just so huge. And it's hard for studios to reckon with having a huge budget for a very, what would amount to be kind of like a smaller or more intimate movie as far as where the conflict is. And that's kind of the issue that Reminiscence ran into. And also it's just like people don't want to see a movie like that if they're spending $15 on a ticket or $20 on a ticket.
Who's spending $20 on a movie ticket? Jesus.
If you're in LA and New York City, that's like the going rate for movie tickets.
Fuck.
I think
that's terrible.
For me,
I saw The Green Knight for $12.
Oh, nice. I think it's like $15 at the theater I go to, but I have the special pass where I spend $25 and I get to see 3 movies a week. So, yeah, that's just a bargain right there if you like going to movies. But yeah, so anyway, the big spoiler for Shang-Chi is like the beginning of the movie. I was like, this is going to be a Dragon Dynasty re-release on Blu-ray. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, oh, this is like in one of those like epic world ending things.
I hate it when they do that. It's like we're two Marvel superheroes whose superpower is punching people. And then it's like you have to save the universe from another blue sky laser with your punching people power.
Yeah, this
Like,
was
fuck this.
This was a giant. This was a giant demon. And he was fighting him with a giant dragon, and it's like, this should be awesome, but the movie is so long that by the time that happens, you're just like, can't we just go back to the intimate story of a kung fu martial artist on the streets of San Francisco? And that's why I recommend everyone watches Police Story.
Just watch The Raid.
Or The Raid.
2.
And The Raid 2. Yeah. I will say this. I'm really interested in watching The Eternals. So we should do an episode on The Eternals. Only reason... Why do you think I want to watch The Eternals? Or force you to watch it?
Because you're a huge Kumail Nanjiani fan?
No, I don't think anyone can say that they're a huge Kumail Nanjiani fan. Who wrote and directed the movie?
Oh, Lord. I don't know.
Oh, my gosh. I'll give you a hint. She won an Academy Award.
Oh, is it Chloe Zhao?
It is.
What the... Oh, yeah, that's right. She was supposed to do a Marvel movie.
Yep.
That'll be interesting.
That's literally the only reason, because you have a history with her movies. And
yeah, she's really good. And she's probably sold out to make some money, and this is going to be another piece of like mediocre trash, but we'll see. Hopefully it isn't.
We'll see.
That's the other thing too. It's like I always hope whenever I see a new Marvel movie, it's like I always hope it's going to be good. It's like, oh, I hope this one will be different, and then it's not, and I'm like, oh, it's fuck.
Yeah.
There's me being stupid again.
Yeah. That's I mean for you, I avoid Shang-Chi, although, Asian American pride over here on my end of the woods.
I mean, I'm technically Asian American too, but I'm not the kind of Asian that anyone cares about. So
you're the kind of Asian American that everyone forgets.
It's like Asian American, they only care about like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, maybe Filipino, Vietnamese. Asia's a big place.
Yeah.
All the other Asians don't get any kind of love or support from these activists or whatever, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's but
the other thing too, it's like all of the Oriental Asians look down on like racially on the rest of Asia, so that I'm in that group where like
it's so bad.
Well, but it's true. Like okay, Far East.
I know
Asians,
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Again, Korea, Japan, China, Vietnam, Taiwan, Singapore. They all look down on like we'll say darker skinned people of the continent, of which I am a part. So of course they would co-opt like all of this visibility shit for themselves and then leave out all of the people they're racist towards.
Kumail Nanjiani in the corner being like, this is why you should see the Eternals, because we cover
yeah,
everything.
exactly. He's like the only, representation anyone else gets.
I will say, like, I was watching this one video about this guy who was like, he was disguising it as sort of like the men's body positivity thing, where it's like there had been actors who would come. I think like Richard Madden, also from the Eternals, came out and he was like, hey man, keeping like the Marvel body up is really tough and it's really hard to do. And this guy was like, yeah man, like we shouldn't, we're so focused on women, like women body positivity, like we should focus on men. And then it took this like really weird turn where he was like, and he's like, we shouldn't be forcing Kumail Nanjiani to get this like super buff body, guys. And I was like, oh.
And then Kumail Nanjiani is just like, bro, look at how buff I am.
No, that's what, but that was the thing. It's like, he's like, it's dangerous for like Kumail Nanjiani to be like, hey man, I want to get that Marvel body. And I was like, oh, you're a men's rights activist who's also just like completely racist.
I know. It's dangerous for a brown person to be shredded.
Yes. Yeah. That's where... And I was like, oh my God, dude. And so...
Yeah. I always thought that was weird because like all the male body positivity people are white. And then like any non-white person, any non-white dude who's absolutely jacked is like, bro, look how jacked I am. Isn't this awesome?
Yeah. Like oh no, it's not cool, Simu Liu, for you to be jacked. Look... The marketing got to me. I like Simu Liu's story, how he was like, hey man, you want to make a Chinese Marvel superhero anytime soon? Back in 2014. And then finally he got to do it, and he's like using his time as a because he did the royalty free like images, the stock images. He's in stock images and stuff, and like I'm like, you know what, dude, good for you. That's the only reason I really liked Shang-Chi. I'm just like, good for you, Simu Liu. Like, good for you.
Simu Liu understands the grind.
Oh yeah, and you know what, man? Like, good for him, because yeah, he can be leading man material, whatever that means. He can be leading man material. So anyway, any last thoughts before we get into plugs?
Everyone should see The Green Knight, and if you hate it, I'm sorry. But
even if they have to pay $20,
it's still a good thing you saw it
on Amazon. Even paying $20 on Amazon or
no, see it in theaters. I mean, yeah, if you split it with friends,
yeah.
If you split it with friends, yeah, sure, you can pay $20 on Amazon.
Yeah, I agree. It pays to see it in theaters, and yeah, I mean, especially if you're a fan of Arthurian mythology, like you have to go in with a pretty open mind, but I think you'll really like it.
I mean, you should go into everything with an open mind.
We say that, but anytime you go into a blockbuster, you know, you and I are both expecting crap. So
well, I have to calibrate my expectations so I won't be disappointed.
Oh man, where can they find us?
Underthewheels.com or on Facebook, Twitter. We have an Instagram, which I should probably start maintaining because I think no one else is. Email us at video@underthewheels.com because some of our emails have gotten jacked up. And I know that's like, why video at underthewheels.com? Well, we have a YouTube channel where we have videos and stuff. So just contact us through that email because right now there is no podcast email.
Good to know.
Yep.
And rate us and leave reviews and yeah.
Oh yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review on and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. And just, you know, I don't know, tell your friends. Say like if movies come up and you're like, hey, you know, if you wanna, like, if I can't convince you to watch The Green Knight, listen to what is probably going to be the first 40% of this podcast, and maybe these two guys can convince you.
Let's see, where are we at time wise? It's like the first 80. It's like 80%. It's 80%.
We spent a lot of time ranting about market psychology, so I don't know.
Oh man. On that note, I'm Matthew,
and I'm Gabe,
and you've just been Under the Wheels. Oh, also apologies to anyone I saw the Green Knight with. Like, I still love you.
Don't apologize. You don't owe them anything. They ruined the movie. Okay, I for real will be a dick to anyone, no matter how much I like or care about them, if they talk during a movie.
Yeah, they were my in-laws.
I have told family members to shut up during a movie before, so.
Finished.